Welcome to the Moved to Meditate podcast. I'm your host, Addie D. Hilster. This is a place for vibrant discussions about mindfulness, movement practices, and ways to find more balance and presence in daily life. Here you'll find resources to help you progress on your path, as well as insightful conversations with mindful movement, yoga, meditation, and Dharma teachers from a range of traditions. On this podcast, we spotlight embodied approaches to mindfulness and the more contemplative aspects of movement practice. Listen in and connect to a community of like-minded practitioners. Hello and welcome, everyone. Happy all the holidays. It's almost the winter solstice here, and of course, summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. It's the end of the calendar year almost, and a natural time to pause and reflect. So thanks for joining me today. If you are new to this podcast, welcome. I hope today's short episode will give you a sense of what goes on here and what to expect in the new year. And if you are a returning listener, thank you. You have inspired me all year to keep this podcast project going, and I'm excited to celebrate some of this year's highlights with you. I'm also planning to talk a little bit about my intentions heading into 2025 and how I'm feeling about things and what I want my work to bring into the world in this next year. Maybe you're doing a similar kind of reflection right now, thinking about your practice or your teaching or just your life in general as the year changes over. Sometimes it's helpful to get a little peek into someone else's process, so I'll share where I am with some ongoing projects and some new ones and how it all fits together, hopefully. And quickly, before I jump into that, just a quick reminder about the holiday sale on courses that I'm offering. At the moment, there is a discount on 2 courses, the 8-hour on-demand Yin Yoga Poses plus Props training and the Ease into Meditation course. The Yin Poses plus Props training is a great way for yoga teachers to get some CEUs. It's affordable, you can do it at your own pace, and it will significantly boost your confidence and creativity adapting yin poses for your students. The other course is called Ease into Meditation, and it's my take on the classic 8-week Intro to Mindfulness course. The difference is that I teach you all the mindfulness skills and principles in movement first. Then we apply them to stillness, which makes learning meditation fun and dynamic and I think easier. Both of these courses are 24% off through December 24th if you enter the coupon code HOLIDAY24 at checkout. Find them on my website at movetomeditate.yoga, and all of this information is also in the show notes, including that code. But back to the topic at hand. Let's start with a recap of the podcast in 2024. This year, there were 25 episodes of the Moved to Meditate podcast, including 10 interviews with guests, 5 guided meditations, and 9 solo episodes. 2 of the solo episodes this spring were excerpts from the book I'm working on, and I'll say more about that in a moment. And this was, of course, the year that I published my 100th episode, which was so amazing. Some of you contributed to that episode with your wonderful voice messages. If you haven't heard that one, which came out in September, I would definitely recommend giving it a listen. It's on the topic of why we practice, and you get to hear from a lot of different voices, all of which are inspiring and guaranteed to give you some warm, fuzzy motivation and appreciation for your own practice journey. I would also like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of my amazing podcast guests this year who graciously agreed to come onto the podcast and share their experiences and their wisdom. Just to name a few of my favorite interviews in 2024, there was episode 82 with Dr. Tamara Russell, who is the author of Mindfulness in Motion. She is a neuroscientist, psychologist, mindfulness researcher, and a black belt in Shaolin Kung Fu. We talked about training mindfulness through movement as both a complement and a possible alternative to sitting meditation. In episode 91, I also got to speak with Anne Cushman, who's been one of my teaching role models for a long time. Anne is a pioneer in the integration of mindfulness, embodied meditation, and yoga. She founded the first multi-year Buddhist meditation training for yoga teachers at Spirit Rock Meditation Center. And in the interview, she shares some fascinating history as someone who had a front row seat to the development of yoga and Buddhist Dharma culture in the West, both at Spirit Rock and during her time working as an editor and writer at Yoga Journal back in its early days. Jeevana Heyman was also kind enough to join me on the podcast for episode 98 to talk about meditation in the yoga tradition. Jeevana, of course, is the founder of the Accessible Yoga movement, and he's currently working on a new book called Accessible Meditation. We talked about the wide variety of meditation styles within yoga and the idea of reframing the postural aspect of yoga asana as a form of meditation itself. Another episode I really enjoyed was the conversation with Sue Hutton and Jan Wozniak on adapting mindfulness meditation practices for neurodivergent students. Sue and Jan work together at a research center in Canada where they've been developing neurodiversity affirming mindfulness programs, and they have a lot of insights to share about navigating sensory issues, working with different meditation anchors, and the kinds of verbal instructions that may or may not work well. That's episode 87, and I highly recommend checking it out, whether you're a teacher of meditation or maybe someone who struggled with the traditional ways that meditation is presented. I think you'll definitely come away with some new ideas. This year, I also enjoyed some in-depth conversations with friends and return guests on the podcast, including the heartfelt dialogue with Erica Webb on being an HSP, or highly sensitive person, my talk with Amanda Hanna about buzzwords and trends in the yoga and somatic movement space and what trauma-informed really means, and the epic fireside chat with Nick Danu on the use of props in yin yoga. So if you missed some of those episodes, they're still there, and this is a great time to go back and listen to all of our guests this year. Going into 2025, I'm planning to space my podcast episodes out a little bit more to make room for other projects. Like I said earlier, I published 25 episodes this year, which is basically every other week. So I'm going to aim for a new episode every third week for a while. I put a lot of love into each episode, so they can end up taking quite a bit of time, and I want to keep going, but I just need to keep it in balance. On a similar note, I am still working on my book, but it's on pause right now. I actually announced my book project this time last year in my pre-holiday podcast episode, so here's the update. I worked really steadily on the book during the first half of the year, and it turned out to be a bigger project than I originally anticipated. When I announced it a year ago, I really thought I'd be able to finish and self-publish my book this year. Ha ha ha. That was partly because the topic is teaching mindful movement, and I have a ton of material from my mindful movement teacher training and from previous podcast episodes and other things I've written. So it's a matter of gathering, organizing, and rewriting that material into a book narrative, which should be easy, right? Yeah, right. While I do love sinking my teeth into a big, juicy project, it started to feel kind of overwhelming and like I was rushing to get there because it was taking so much time from other things that I needed to work on too. So I knew I needed to step back and give the book some space to breathe. It wants to be bigger than I originally thought, and that means a bit of reconfiguring the plan to bring it to life. And honestly, I think as a one-person business, the hardest thing is how to allocate your time. Any of the rest of you out there who are running a one-person business, maybe you can relate to that. But I was feeling stressed about other things I couldn't get to while working on the book in the way that I was approaching it then. So I'm letting it rest and marinate for a while, and I know I will get back to it, hopefully in the coming years sometime when I feel a little more supported and spacious to give the book the attention it needs. So, what am I working on right now? At this moment, I'm embracing a series of smaller projects and courses, like things I can share sooner rather than later. And I'm also looking for more in person teaching this year. When Mike and I were out walking last weekend, it came to me that my word for 2025 is going to be light. I don't always do a word of the year, but this does feel like a time when orienting to intention could be extra helpful, like giving myself an extra compass for navigating the unknown. And I'm saying this in the context of what's going on in the US right now, because this was also the year that I made a podcast episode in response to the election, which was never something that I planned to do. But we're heading into an uncertain time here. No one knows yet what it's going to look like, and there's a range of predictions, many of which are negative and even pretty extreme. Others are more hopeful that it will be okay. I don't know. What we do know is it's going to be contentious, it's going to be divisive, and a lot of people are feeling fearful, angry, guarded. There's a lot unknown. So, in the context of anticipating heavy and dark, I'm choosing the word light. That surprised me a little because I'm never one that wants to go into that spiritual bypass mode of good vibes only, or using spiritual practices to avoid problems or be delusionally optimistic. However, I do know that our practices can be used to help balance our hearts and minds. If we get totally lost and bogged down in heavy and dark, how is that going to help anyone? Mindfulness is about acknowledging what's real and true, and also seeing it from a bigger perspective that allows us the freedom to relate to it skillfully. So to me, light means bringing light into the world. Light can mean goodness, kindness, and care, choosing the light side instead of joining the dark side. It can also mean knowledge and wisdom, as in illuminating a truth or shedding light on a subject. I want to be intentional about finding lightness, like play and joy and fun, in my day-to-day life and in my teaching. And it feels right to me right now to make my offerings a lighter lift for those who might participate. Not light as in moving away from depth, but just considering people's capacities. So I'm working on some ideas that would require less time commitment to join, making some smaller options that are a lighter cost, and hopefully lighter for me to create too. I'm wanting to be nimble right now because who knows what 2025 holds. I mean, we never really know what the future holds, but there are times when that uncertainty vibe is heightened, and, well, this is one of those. So yeah, light speaks to me right now. I'm also looking to get out into my local community more and connect with people, both by doing fun social things and also through developing more in-person teaching opportunities. I haven't done a lot of that since I had my studio and since I moved up here so far away from where I knew people and had in-person teaching opportunities. And I'm missing that community connection. I'm definitely not saying I'm starting another studio, but I am hoping to get more involved in yoga and movement and mindfulness circles around here. Another exciting in-person thing that's happening is a retreat that I'm part of in Los Angeles in September. My friend Francine Ong, who I do know from my Spiral Path Yoga community back in LA, she's organizing an amazing 5-day retreat, and she asked me to co-teach it with her, which is awesome. It's called Inner Stillness, Outer Flow, Meditation and Movement for Intuitive Wisdom. And we'll be offering daily yoga, qigong, and meditation, plenty of time to rest or be outside in nature. There's going to be lovely food, a sound bath, Reiki healing, like-minded people, and just lots and lots of goodness. I can't wait. And I know September sounds like a long ways off, but if you think a delicious retreat in LA sounds good, by the way, you might want to just go check out the details and think about reserving a spot. The info is at francineong.com/2025 retreat. And I'll put the link to that in the show notes so you don't have to figure out how to spell everything. But I'm just really looking forward to this opportunity to head back to my old home in Southern California and hopefully reconnect with some of my yogis and friends there and meet some new people as well. So maybe think about joining us. So, light. I'm embracing this intention and trying to nurture hopefulness and energy, things to look forward to, seeing the good around me. That's what I'm taking into the next weeks and months and year. How about you? I wonder if you have a word for next year. In any case, I hope you're finding some space here around the solstice time to reflect on the past year and how you want to step into the coming seasons. Okay, with that, I'm wishing you a happy solstice, peaceful holiday season, and a kind transition into the new year. Thank you for listening to this podcast and for bringing your light into the world. So that's today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend, subscribe on YouTube, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and help others find it that way. To learn more about my work, the Moved to Meditate class library, courses, or teacher trainings, go to movedtomeditate.yoga. This is Addie D. Hilster. Thanks so much for listening.